that by usually interviewing world leading authorities and they share their expertise with you. I have with me tonight on the show my co-host, as every week, Mohammed Haseeb. Salaam alaikum Haseeb, how are you?
Walaikum salam. I'm very well, Shaz. Thank you for asking. How about yourself? You okay?
Very good, thank you. Very good indeed. I hope it's not too cold for you.
No, it's not that. It's not been cold the last couple of days. Before that, it has been. And I've got the Russian hat as well, as you mentioned.
Well, you got a full head of hair, so you've got nothing to worry about.
Oh, thank you for that, Shaz.
Unless we're on Facebook Live, then everybody.
I'm wearing glasses. I think I might pass them off to you.
You can give me the glasses and keep your hair. That's right. Yes. As always, we'd love for you to get involved. You can email the studio on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook. And as we shared with you last month, it's a weekly program where we interview different people who are experts in different fields. But we decided from last month that one show every month would be where Haseeb and I sit down, talk to you, share some of our expertise, experience, thoughts, knowledge, so that it breaks up the interval of how the show goes. So this is that particular week or day in the month where we're going to do that. So is there anything in particular, Haseeb, that you would like to talk about?
What I'd like to ask yourself is, Shaz, because I've not written a book, you've written books. It's just someone wants to think about writing a book. What do they think of? What techniques do they think of? Also, a lot of people do start a book, but many of them don't finish it. Because I think is the task that they have. I think they don't plan it beforehand, and something that you have written books, and you are an author. Just like to ask you, what sort of techniques, where to start? What each step entails, and how to keep from feeling overwhelmed by writing a book.
That's a good question. Writing a book is very complicated. When you're enthusiastic or you talk to somebody and they say, you should write a book, one gets very excited, thinking, oh yes, I could go away and write a book. Well, once you start it, the most difficult thing in my experience, and having spoken to numerous authors, is finishing the book. So then that's something which you've alluded to, and you're absolutely right. It is hard work. So there's a few different techniques, but the best one, or in fact, before you even look at techniques, is write a book on something you know about.
Yeah,
so
that's
don't
a good start.
try to be, don't think I want to write a book about topic X, whatever topic X may be, just because you think that's going to be popular or it's going to make you look clever. That's the last thing you should do. That's ego kicking in. Stay away from that. So write a book on a topic that you know about. Once you've done that, you then want to be thinking about, do I want to find a publisher or do I want to self-publish? With the way that the world is going on Amazon and many different platforms like Lulu and a few others, you can sell books through them, and that makes it easier. Or you can go to a publisher. If you have a good idea, you obviously send in your proposal. That gets checked. If they like that, they'll usually come back and amend a few of the chapters or the ideas. They'll then give you a deadline of saying, can you get this book ready by, say, in 6 months' time, which is usually good because that really sharpens your focus. If your idea is really good, they'll pay you something up front, and then they'll pay you an ongoing royalty depending on how many books you sell. So partly it's kudos with a recognized publisher, partly it's distribution rights, because they'll put your books up in sale in good bookshops like Waterstones, for example, at WH Smith's, airports, those type of places where the book is visible and people passing by or going into the bookshop will be able to see your book and buy it. They'll also help you with some marketing. They don't do as much on marketing as you'd expect, but they do help you a little bit. And usually one of the requirements of a publisher is how big is your network. So if you're a speaker, that usually helps because you're going out to speak to audiences. You can sell your book. If you've got lots of followers on social media like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, wherever, and you can leverage those contacts, that usually helps. And if you're an expert in a particular niche, in one particular sector, that usually helps. And if you have a following, that makes it even easier. So they do help you with the marketing, but they really expect you to be pushing the book out apart from giving you distribution. Self-published, you've got more flexibility, but you've got to be very ruthless with the planning. You don't get any help at all because you're writing the book yourself. So what to do is think about how long you want the book to be. So if you said I'm looking at 180 odd pages, depending on the size of the book. Just let's look at a standard size book. That's probably 50,000 words or so. Then you want to break that down into different chapters. Have an introduction, have a conclusion. Maybe you may at the end of every chapter want a summary or action points. And then once you've broken it down into chapters, then put that in your diary. So week 1 I'll do chapter 1, week 2 chapter 2, depending on how efficient you want to be and how quickly you want to get the book out there, and stick to that. So make that a regular commitment. Don't think I'll do it in the evenings or I'll do it on the weekends. It ain't gonna get done. If you're really committed, then do it during work times. And if you're an employee somewhere, then obviously you don't have much of a choice, because you can't go to your employer and say, I'm going to spend 2 hours in the morning writing a book which is for my personal benefit. Then you have to do it in the evenings or wake up early in the morning. People usually find that works really well. But then some people say, I'm not really a morning person, I'm more productive in the afternoon or in the evenings. If that's you, then obviously work towards that particular time where you are most productive. Write the book. Once you've written the book, money is well spent finding an editor who can edit the book, tighten up the English, the grammar, and the whole structure of the book. Once you've done that, you can then go to quite a few companies who will lay out the book for you, sort out the typeface, and then find a printer who can print the book for you. The printer can give you a cover, or the company that you use for the typeface and the font and the layout will be able to produce a cover for you. Do that, print the book, go to Amazon, register as an author, and then put the book on there. They'll sell the book for you. You can also, there are a few other companies like Lulu who will help sell the book on your behalf, and you can then have an ebook and put that on cheaper, like 99 pence, and have a special offer. Get that out. If you think you're onto a good number, then you can have an audio book and sell that on Audible, which is owned by Amazon, and it's very popular at the moment. Has been for the last few years, and that's going to really help you pick up more listeners. So they're kind of readers, but they don't read because they prefer to listen to a book. So you'll get more listeners who will buy your book and listen to it on Audible. That's pretty much the process. I've probably made it sound easier than it is. It is very hard work, but if you're really committed and passionate about having a book, then you'll do the work that comes along with it. If you're just enthusiastic and you're excited that I should have a book for just to stroke your own ego, or whatever the reason may be, then you'll start off with full batteries and you'll soon go flat.
You will. That's brilliant. There's quite a few tips you've given there. Thank you for that, Shaz. Also, writing the book on there, before you have an idea, before you write the book, do you think you should go to people and ask their views on the topic that you're writing for? What would they be thinking? What would they like? Or just write it and go from there?
That depends. So if you have a good following, so if you've got a community on Facebook, for example, where you own the Facebook group, or you own a group in LinkedIn, then you can go to the group and say, I'm thinking of writing a book on this particular topic here. In that group, you'll be known for something. Let's just say you're known as a tax advisor, okay? And everybody in that group comes to you for tax advice. You can say, I'm writing a book on tax. A, do you think that's a good idea or bad idea? Most people will usually come back and say, oh, that's a good idea, because everybody wants another book, because this book might cure all their ailments and problems in life. And then you can say, okay, these are the 16 things I'm thinking of writing, i.e. the 16 chapters. Is there anything else you would want me to include in the book? And people will give you fantastic feedback. Because no matter how clever we are, this is what we think people need. A lot of times, especially when it comes to books, you want to know what the hungry crowd wants. What do they want? And then write that content for them. So they'll give you some of the ideas, and then you can go one step further. And if you've got 2 or 3 ideas, then say, I've got this idea to write a book on tax, for example, corporation tax, this book on income tax, this book on VAT, if you happen to know those 3 subject areas. And which one should I do first, and which one do you think will be most valuable, and see which one proves to be most popular. You can then come up with titles, or ask them to come up with titles, and people are very good at this. They'll even make your life easier for you, because one of the hardest things when writing a book is to come up with the title. You think, what shall I call the book? Writing the content is easier than coming up with the title. They'll do that for you too. So if you can do that, fine. If you can't do that and you don't have a community, then you want to be talking to your customers, clients, patients, prospects about what they think. If you don't have that and you're part of business groups or a mastermind group, which we may talk about later depending on time, go and ask them. But if you're asking people generally who don't know what you're an expert in, or who don't actually relate to your service, so there's no point in asking somebody about writing a book on tax for entrepreneurs to somebody who works as an employee, because they don't usually get it. So they don't know whether it's going to be of any use or not. So ask the crowd who you're targeting for their input and advice. It's always a good idea to do that.
No, it's a very good idea, because you want to get people's views on that.
Yep.
No, that's fantastic. That's brilliant for that on the Shaz. Also, what is a writer's block mean?
Writer's block means when you wake up in the morning and you're really being lazy, you think, I don't know what to think of right now, and I can't write and I can't be creative. So sometimes that happens, where I think partly you get overwhelmed. You've got so many ideas, you don't know where to start. And partly you think, what do I write about today? And that's a very common occurrence, which writers come across. So the best way to overcome that, there's lots of information on this on the internet, by the way, and I'm not an expert on writer's block. It's just how I do it is just write stuff. Just generally start writing things. Or if you know you're more creative in the morning, then write at that time. Or if you like doing certain tasks, something else which is unrelated to writing a book, which helps you become more creative, or energizes you, do that thing, like going for a bike ride, going for a walk, going for a run, whatever it may be. Do that to get the blood flowing in your mind, to get those creative juices going, and then come back and write. And what you'll find is you'll be able to write something about that particular chapter or topic or area.
Another thing that you mentioned is very important, is having discipline. I think many people think we'll do it tomorrow, we'll do it another day, we'll get another time to write on there. But I think you need to plan at a time where a certain time, as you said, has to be to do with that book, where you want to write about, and stick to that. So timetable is very important in writing a book.
I think a timetable is important in doing anything in life, because we're all prone to making excuses, we're all prone to procrastinating. So if you put it in your diary, make it a fixed affair that I'm going to do this every single week, or however the frequency may be, and then force yourself to do it. You get on with it. There's a guy called Brian Tracy, fantastic personal development guru, and he has a book called Eat That Frog. So if you think those big tasks that you really don't want to do, but are either mundane, boring, long, or hard, or complicated in your mind, by the way, this is all made up in your mind. Do them first. Eat that frog first thing in the morning. Get it out the way. Because then once you've got that out the way, that's a burden off your shoulders. Then focus on some other stuff. And once you've done the task, you think, why did I spend 2 weeks mulling over this, really kind of fearing with this, worrying about this? It only took half an hour, or however long it takes to do this. I should have just done this in the first place. So it's all in the mind.
Also, what would you say regarding having a mentor in writing a book? Would you recommend it, or just go along with yourself? Or
again, depends on your budget. So
as if you can afford it.
Yeah, if you can afford it, it's always a good idea. You can have a mentor who has either written a book, who can then guide you on the process and say these are the do's and don'ts. Okay, and that's useful. And you can also have a paid for mentor, and these people usually help you write the book, so they give you clarity on whether to self-publish or publish. If you publish, they'll help you find a publisher, depending on who they are, or they'll put you in touch with an agent who'll find you a publisher. They'll then sit down and craft the book for you in terms of structure, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 5, chapter 25, however long the book may be. And then they'll hold you accountable, say, okay, we're going to meet up once every 2 weeks on Skype, for example, or we're going to meet up face to face. So by then you should have done 2 chapters, and that's going to really hold you accountable. So if you've got the budget, do that. It's helpful. If you haven't got the budget and you're writing your first book and you want to have a go at it, just sit down and write a book anyway. If it never gets published, it doesn't matter. You're building up your stamina, and you're building up your discipline.
Also, how important are the first couple of chapters that you write in a book? Because myself, if I read a book, I'll read the first couple of pages. If it interests me, just I'm in a bookshop, for example, if it interests me, I'll read it. If it doesn't, I'll put it back. So how important is the first chapter?
It is, but it's not just the first couple of chapters as such. Sometimes people will look at the back of the book. So if you've got any good testimonials, that might capture their attention. That might encourage them to read the book. If you have an introduction about yourself, you may put things in there which intrigues and entices them to read the book. Okay. If at the back you've listed out some of the information like your experience, and that captures their attention, they might read the book. If all those things tick the right boxes, then the first couple of chapters are important, because you got to make them very sticky, very intriguing, very valuable, so that they think, oh, these 2 chapters were really good. So page number 5, for example, has to be so good that they go on to page 6 to page 7. So you write it page by page, and once you do page by page, then you do paragraph by paragraph, then paragraph by paragraph becomes line by line by line, when I say line by line, I mean sentence by sentence, and then sentence by sentence becomes word by word. You get the picture. This is how complicated it is. So every word that features on a particular page has to fight for the right to be in there. If you think that word doesn't deserve to be there because it doesn't fit with what you're looking to do, take that word out and put in a new word. That is a skill in itself in terms of copywriting. But if you have a good editor, they can do that for you too.
Also, how important is the cover of the book in selling the book? You do get the ebooks as well.
Exceptionally, because titles sell. Simple as that. So if you have a really good title, don't make the title as such that it's selling a particular idea, and then when people read the book, it's something totally different. But if you can make the title jazzed up, very appealing, with a very appealing subtitle, then it's going to work really well. And going back to the Ron Seal advert, it should do what it says on the tin. So make sure that the book does what it says in the title and the subtitle. But the title is very important. I've bought books just by reading the title. Partly I've bought books because of an author, and that usually happens is where I've read a previous book of theirs was really good, I think let's read this, and partly because somebody's recommended it. But when I'm walking into Smith's or Waterstones, or I'm at the airport, usually I'm just buying the book based on the cover, the title. When I say cover, I mean title, and I look at the back in terms of the testimonials or the person's biography or experience. This looks interesting. Then what I will do is look at the summary and say, okay, what are the chapters here? And if I've got time, I might just flick through the opening of each chapter, the first couple of sentences, and say, okay, this looks good, let's buy it.
Also, the research in the book. I think that's a very important aspect of doing your research beforehand, because many people do their research on the internet, and doing it on the internet, it's not always all the information isn't there. They don't go out there, talk to people, they know human beings, and just look on the internet and get all the information on there. Is that something you would recommend?
It depends what your book's about. So some of the information may be available on the internet. Use it. There are authentic and good sources. For example, the BBC, for example, if you were to use that, that's a good source. Financial Times would be a good source. Those types of, or The Economist. But just generally going on to Google and reading somebody's blog and reading their opinion and perhaps quoting that, unless they are a leading recognized authority, won't be such a good idea. So if you hunt for the information, you'll find it. If you're going to have a very lazy approach and go into Wikipedia, I would recommend you stay away from that, because that is not an authentic source. Yes, a lot of the stuff on Wikipedia is good. Is it true and accurate? I don't know, and some of it probably isn't. So I would stay away from Wikipedia, for example, when writing a book. And generally browsing to find some information, maybe start with Wikipedia, but otherwise don't do that. And then obviously there's other research, like reading other books, depending on what your book is, by the way. And then your own stories, your own experiences, stories of your clients, of your customers, of your patients, and other interactions you've had with people, which you can put in there. And that again is your research and your experience. So it depends. But the title or the book actually will dictate how much research you do. Because if you're writing a book about your life experiences, you don't need to do any research. Okay? If you're writing a book on how to be more productive, and you are an expert in productivity, you don't need to do that much research. What you might need to do is find some sources of information which shows how productivity is being challenged by interruptions like social media, email, this. So you might want some facts on that, and you might want some facts on health and how health affecting productivity. So those types of things, where you go onto medical sites, recognized, authentic medical sites, to find that research and use that research. But depending on what the book is, will depend on how much research you need to do.
So how do you price a book? Everyone wants to price a book higher at value, but many books, when you write your first book, the price on there should be, as you mentioned before, have an offer for 99p and so forth. How do you value your book? What price should you put on there?
I think if most people were being honest, they'd say a finger in the air job. Okay, so if you are writing a book on tax and you're a leading authority on a particular area like capital gains tax, you'll probably sell that book, generally speaking, for about £100. Now, most books don't sell for £100. If you're writing tax statutes, you're looking at £200, £300 per book. But if you're writing a general book, what I tend to see is something from £4.99 to £19.99. £7.50 sells well, £4.99 sells well, £10, £12, those type of prices sell well. When you get to £15 or above, unless you're well known and you have a good following, it's not going to work that well. So, and it depends on your overall ambition for the book. Are you still looking to keep it cheap and sell lots of copies, or are you looking to sell less copies and allow it to build up the momentum over a number of years? But I think $9.99 seems to be very popular too. $8.99, $11.99, that kind of price is where most books are at. If you've just joined us, thank you very much for joining us and welcome. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. I'm your host Shaz Nawaz, and I have my co-host Mohammed Haseeb with me. You're listening to the Empower Hour show, and the purpose of our show is to inspire, motivate and empower you to achieve bigger and better things in your life. We usually do that by inviting a guest interviewee where they share their expertise in a particular given field. But we've decided from last month that we would spend one show per month sharing our own knowledge, experience, expertise and thoughts with you. And this is that particular week of the month, and it's usually going to be either the last week of the month or the first week of the month. If you have any questions, please do interact with us. You can send us an email on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text or WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook, and we will be delighted to hear from you, and we'll be delighted to answer your question.
No, that's brilliant, Shaz. The information you shared before on writing a book, it was fantastic. It's brilliant ideas you gave there. And I'm sure the listeners, if they are thinking of writing a book, you have shown them the right path and what they should be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. A book's always a good idea to... it enables you to gather your thoughts, so that's always good. It focuses you to think of things very differently. It also ensures that you become more disciplined especially if you want to see it through. Helps you with your credibility, so you get recognized and known as an author. People will read your books all over the place and get to know you and call you or email you or find you on Facebook and thank you, which is always a nice feeling. So you're giving something back to the wider community, and that is always a very good thing. And I think everybody has a book in them, and everybody has the ability to write a book. We're about to go to a break, so please do stay with us after the break, where we'll be sharing some more insights with you. Assalamu alaikum.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
I've just come out of Penny Appeal's Orphan Kind Orphans Accommodation. Brothers and sisters, they've got a kitchen where they're getting fresh food cooked and served to them. They've got foster mothers looking after them. These are how orphans should be looked after. Sponsor an orphan for pennies a day. Call 03000 11 11 11 or visit the website pennyappeal.org. Remember, small change, big difference.
Do you have lots of clutter at home or in the office that needs to be kept but nowhere to keep it? Ivet Self-Storage offers a secure, affordable, clean and dry home for your belongings. We have security systems in place which are monitored 24 hours a day, ensuring that your items are safe. With a simple monthly payment, Ivet Self-Storage provides secure and tailored facilities to meet your specific requirements, whether short or long term. We offer the best prices and longest opening hours in Peterborough. For more information, please call on 01733 306 456 or visit us at Ivet Way, Westwood.
Do you like the idea of being a radio presenter? Have you got a great idea for a show? Why not get in touch with us? We are always looking for enthusiastic, committed and professional individuals to join our team of volunteer presenters. Send us an email to info@salamradio.co.uk and we'll be in touch. You could be on air sooner than you think.
Gems and jewels. Wise sayings, interesting events, and moral lessons from Islamic history. The story of a woman and her children.
Aisha radiyallahu anha said, "A woman came to me with her 2 children asking for help. All that I could find with me was a single date. I gave it to her and she divided it into 2, giving half of the date to each of her 2 daughters, herself abstaining from eating anything from it. I left her, and when Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to me, I informed him of what happened. He said, whoever is put to trial with daughters in any way, but then does good by them, they will be a barrier between him and the hellfire." Collected by Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and At-Tirmidhi. This hadith and others like it give cause for joy to every mother and father who have been blessed with a daughter, for through that daughter they are shown a way that leads to paradise.
Sometimes when the world's not on your side, you don't know where to run to, you don't know where to hide. You gaze at the stars in the sky, at the mountains so high, through the tears in your eyes, looking for a reason to replace what is gone. Just remember, remember that you are never alone. You are never alone. Just reach into your heart and Allah is always there. You are never alone. Through sorrow and through grief, through happiness and peace, you will never.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening, and thank you for joining us after the break. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. This is the Empower Hour show, and I am your host, Shaz Nawaz, and I have my co-host with me, Mohammed Haseeb. The purpose of our show is to inspire, motivate, and empower you to achieve bigger and better things in your life and in your business. And we do that usually by inviting world-leading authorities who share their knowledge, experience, and expertise. But what we also do is once a month, Haseeb and I sit down and share some of our thoughts with you about life or life in business, in fact, to tell you what's happening on the ground on a day-to-day basis. And this week happens to be that particular week, and it'll usually be the last Tuesday of the month or the first Tuesday of the month. So please do get involved and do ask us any questions that you have. You can email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, and you can send us a message through Facebook. Haseeb, how are you, sir?
I'm really well, Shaz. As starting from the first part of the show, what you mentioned was fantastic. Brilliant insights on there.
You're not being biased, are you?
No, I'm not being biased. I'm sure the listeners can.
I want you to be harsh on me.
I'm sure the listeners can give us the feedback as well if that information that you gave, the advice that you gave, did help them or not. And I'm sure they'll agree with me. Some might not, but I'd like to hear why not. It's always good to hear.
Opinions are like belly buttons, Haseeb. Everybody has one.
Yes,
so
yes.
We've got to listen to everybody and take it in and respect their opinion. We may not agree with them, but they're entitled to their own
Absolutely.
thoughts. Some are very objective and matter of fact, and usually good feedback. Some are subjective, based on who they are and where they come from in terms of their own personal viewpoint. And we thank them for their advice, because feedback is always a gift, and we move on.
Also, as you mentioned about books and come to the right subject about criticism, there's an author I know who wrote a book, and many people said, complained about his book. This wasn't there. You should have mentioned this or mentioned that on there. How is the best way to take criticism in writing a book? Because I'm sure,
the number one feedback that people usually get about their book is some clever clog says, you missed off a full stop, or you missed off a particular word, or you've got a typo in your book, which is very nice of them, by the way, because if you have a secondary edition, or when your print run finishes and you order a fresh print, you can then change those mistakes, which is very nice of them. But that is the most common feedback, and like I said a few moments ago, feedback usually tends to be very subjective from most people. Some are objective, most are subjective, and we should always thank them for their feedback, listen to what they're saying, and see if they have a valid point. If they do, and then take that on board and try and make changes. If you've got a number of people who are talking about the same thing, that means there's an issue. You need to pay attention to it. But if one person tells you your book's really crap, it's a waste of time, I wasted $9.99, say thank you very much, I'm sorry I disappointed you, and just move on.
You don't give them a refund?
Well, I would. I was about to go into that. I personally would say, I'm really sorry I wasted your money. Here's your £9.99 or whatever you might like back, and just move on. Fine. If you don't like the book, have your money back. But not everybody will do that. But seldom are people that harsh and crude usually. But if they are, that's fine. But if 900 people or 99 people or a vast number of people email you, call you, text you, or get hold of your contact details and say the book's really bad, you have a problem. So it depends on the scale of the feedback. But some will like you, some won't. So generally speaking, 5 to 10% of people think you're amazing no matter what you talk about.
Also,
5 to 10% think you're really bad and crap no matter how good you are. Okay, that happens, and our job is to focus on the 80 to 90% in between and convert them into followers. Okay, so that they because they usually sat on a fence. They're not sure they're going to judge and assess you based on how you perform. So focus more on them to turn them into advocates. But what we do is we focus on the 5 to 10% who say things aren't really good at all. And say, oh, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, my stuff's not really good. And then we go home and cry and wallow and complain and bitch and moan and whinge because 2 people out of a room full of 100 or 4 people or 5 people said, I didn't like your talk because you were boring, you weren't engaging, you weren't interactive, your information was very basic, or something else like that. We won't focus on the 20 who said, you were fantastic, you were brilliant, that's the best talk I've ever seen. And we can change talk into a book, by the way. That's the best book I've ever read, life-changing. I can see how I'm going to get 89 different ideas from this book. I've already got 89 different ideas which I'm going to use in my life or my business to improve.
Also, how do you market your book to your target market? As in about a certain topic, how do you market that book? How do you know that book's out there? Some people.
You can do, if you first stick it on Amazon, you can then run particular marketing campaigns through Amazon. They cost money, but that helps you get reach. Use social media, so your own Facebook page, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all those different platforms. You can use those. You can have a website for your book, and then you can use Google AdWords to promote the book. Again, it depends on how much the book, how much profit the book's going to make you. So you've got to be pretty smart about how much you spend. You can't go crazy spending a lot of money on a book in terms of marketing it, because you're not going to make the money back usually. Most books don't make money. What happens is you make money through the book. So if you're a coach, consultant or advisor or something else, the book is like a phenomenal business card which opens doors for you. People then invite you to speak, or they book you for you to engage with some work for them, and that's where you make the money. So if you're clear on that particular path, then it's good to spend money up front to get them to or encourage them to buy the book, because once they buy the book, a certain percentage will book you to do some further work. That further work is worth X. Let's say X is £10,000, and if you get 10 people paying you £10,000 a year, that's £100,000. I think I've covered this previously. On 100,000, you're going to make 50 grand profit. Okay, now how much money are you willing to pay to get to 50 grand profit in terms of upfront marketing on the book? That's how you do that, and then you can get people in your industry or your sector to recommend the book, to tweet about it. If you're a speaker, you can go out there, speak about your book, or pick out 2 or 3 chapters in your book, turn that into a keynote speech, talk about that, and say, okay, if you want to learn more, read my book. And then you can get celebrity endorsements and all that type of stuff, which costs a lot of money, and unless it's going to be some kind of a bestseller, probably stay away from that. Getting testimonials from people recognized in your industry usually is a good credibility booster. That helps too. So there's a lot of things you can do to try and sell the book, but it all depends on how far you want to go with it.
Listeners written in asking a question, asking, many people get stuck in the middle of the book when they're writing chapters. Why is that common? Because that's something that he's mentioned, that is from his research. He's seen that a lot of people get run out of ideas when they're in the middle of the book. The starting and ending is pretty easy, but in the middle,
yeah, we always get stuck in the middle when it comes to everything. When I'm on the motorway, a 2-hour journey, Haseeb, the first half an hour I'm very enthusiastic. The last half an hour I think I'm nearly there now, it's okay. But the middle, which is usually the hour or so, always drags. I think at the start, because you're so enthusiastic, you can write it quickly usually. Near the end, you can see light at the end of the tunnel, so you're kind of engaged and inspired to finish the book. In the middle, you sometimes feel like you're in no man's land. This is why at the start, structure the book, and this is why if you go to a publisher, they ask you to write out each or spell out each chapter. So you would look at the structure. I've got 26 chapters, and then write bullet points for what you're going to talk about in every single chapter, and then build on those bullet points when you write the book. So if you do all that kind of work up front, then when you come to the middle, you know what you're writing about, because you've got 8 chapters laid out for the middle, and the other 8 chapters have 16 bullet points for each chapter, for example, and you just expand on every single bullet point, and you can go crack on. If the middle is very difficult for you for whatever reason, you've already written a book, for example, then why not start with the middle? So write the middle first, then write the ending, and then write the opening few chapters. Better still, what I find is write the ending first. So start with the end in mind, write the last few chapters first, and then either work backwards or start from the front again, and then work in order. But you don't have to write chapter 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5 in that particular order. You can write whichever chapter you like. So if there's a few chapters that enthuse you or really excite you, write them first. Or if there's a few chapters that you really dread writing, you're not going to enjoy them, but you think, let me eat that frog and get them out the way, write them first, because then you think, yeah, I've got the hard stuff out the way now, it's all plain sailing to some extent, and then do that. It depends how your own mind works and how you play tricks with your own mind, with that voice in your head, and how that voice misleads you, and how you manage that voice. And different people work differently here.
No, that's brilliant. Fantastic, Shaz. Thank you for that. There you go. Give me some ideas right at the end first.
Yep.
And that's fantastic. Thank you for that, Shaz. Also, for any of the listeners like to ask a question, Shaz has mentioned before, please text or WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978, or they could email us at studio@salamradio.co.uk. Also, some other aspect you're going to discuss, Shaz, regarding business. As you said, everything in life, you got to be disciplined. Writing a book, disciplined in business.
Yeah.
And the time constraints people have in writing a book or writing, the time that's spent in a business, and they make a big deal about it. I haven't got the time. I haven't got the time, and this is a common, excuse people have. And how do you get in the habit of getting, in a habit of doing things at a certain time, or doing things to a deadline and sticking to them deadlines?
There's a number of things that come into this, and this is like a whole show on its own, talking about this particular area, whether you want to call it time management, self-management, productivity, self-discipline. Partly depends on how passionate and excited and enthusiastic you are about doing something. If you're really enthusiastic about it and you really like it, you'll do it quickly. If you're not so enthusiastic but the initial idea excited you and the enthusiasm dies out, then it gets harder and harder and harder. Okay, so you've got to I think there's a particular saying about enthusiasm which escapes my mind right now, or in terms of commitment. Commitment is doing what you said you would do long after the mood you said it in has left you. That's commitment. So you committed to something when you're in a very happy, high mood, and 2 days later, 4 days later, a week later, that particular enthusiasm has left you, and then commitment has to kick in for you to see through that particular goal or objective. That's commitment. So it's discipline comes through practice. It's like anything. If you want to run a marathon, you've never run a marathon, you do first run the block, and I tried that a couple of times, Haseeb, and I thought, forget this for a game of soldiers. 26 miles seems like a very long journey. I'll pack up my bags and go home. But you start off slowly, doing a bit. It's the old analogy, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And then you build that muscle. Same with discipline. You build that muscle as you go along. But the more you can automate your own processes in your mind, the more you can systemize how you're going to do things, the more you can force yourself to say, here's my plan, this is how I'm going to do it. 9 to 10 I'll do this, 10 to 11 I'll do this. So just plan out the whole day as much as you can. Then you run your day and you manage your own agenda and you get stuff done. And most of us really have to force ourselves to do things. It's just the people who are successful are good at forcing themselves because they have a bigger purpose and they've got good clarity and they understand why they're doing what they're doing. Most of us don't have that clarity, don't have that bigger, higher purpose. So we just talk of big ideas, but when it comes to implementation, we'll make 101 excuses. As simple as that.
I know what we should learn is we have that commitment, stick to that commitment, and shouldn't make a commitment when the mood changes, and go away from that commitment when the mood changes. That's brilliant there, Shaz. And thank you for that. Also, there's something else regarding many people have this aspect, speaking, writing a book, having that fear of starting. I think people complicate things before in the mind. They have so many ideas, what they want to do, how they want to do it, and they complicate things. They put fear in the mind. How do you overcome them fears? Because there's no clarity in when they want to start something off. Instead of starting it, they have these ideas, or this could happen, what if. And I think, as you mentioned before, is something, just go and get it done. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, most of these things are either self-limiting beliefs in your own mind, or they are made up concerns or fears. So some people fear success of doing something because it might change their life, or they might make more money, or they'll have to change their friends, or they'll have to move out the neighborhood, or they might end up buying a new car or doing something else, which people will resent them for. And you probably know what I'm talking about here, Haseeb.
No idea,
different guises, but so people resent that a lot in their lives. Then there's subconscious problems about when they were a child. Those come back and haunt them, and that holds them back as well. But I mean, speaking and writing a book are two different things. I mean, once you've written a book, you're exposed to out there. People think somebody's going to catch me out. A lot of people have this imposter syndrome. I'm not as good as I think I am, and people are going to catch me out. They're going to find out I'm nowhere near as good as what they think I am. So our good listeners can research the imposter syndrome, and they'll find that is reasonably common in people. Other than that, standing up and speaking in public is difficult anyway, because again, it's those misconceptions and assumptions which aren't true. They're not going to like me. I'll stand up, I'm going to make a fool of myself. My accent isn't right, my English isn't good, they don't like the way I dress, I'm too fat, I'm too slim, I walk too much, I move my hands too much, I do this, I do that. They'll come up with so many different reasons about why the audience won't like them, and that stops them from going and standing up and speaking. So it's all self-limiting beliefs. Not all, most self-limiting beliefs will stop us, and when you do it 2, 3 or 4 times, you think, this is really good, I like it, so you do more of it.
Which speaker in your mind that sticks to yourself when you listen to them think, that was a brilliant speech? He was a brilliant speaker, and the reasons why he was a brilliant speaker?
There's lots of them, to be honest with you.
Or the few that come to your mind?
I like Steve Jobs. Because of who he was on stage. The way he dressed, the way he talks, and then some of the language that he used to use was fantastic, and the enthusiasm would come across. So there was no drama or fakeness in him. It was very.
Why is it important to use the right language?
Because language sells it, inspires it, and encourages. Words have a profound impact on how people actually receive your advice and then how they react to it. So you can say something by using 2 different words. One word gets you a better result than the other word. Just like please and thank you. Using that quite often makes a big difference. So words have a profound impact. I mean, some of the words that Steve used to use were fantastic. I mean, he did made up words. He just made them up. But they were energetic movement. They had adjectives. And they were full of excitement. So I liked him a lot, and he practiced and rehearsed his presentation a lot, especially when a new product was being launched, or a newer version of a product was being launched. So I like him a lot. I like his speeches a lot. And Barack Obama I like a lot. I think he's fantastic. Master of the pause, master of repetition, makes a point and how he repeats that point 2 or 3 times within a few minutes to really hit home, how he simplifies things, doesn't use complicated words to show people how clever he is, and then he uses that long pause to emphasize his point, to allow people to think about it, to allow the point to sink in, then he moves on. Using the pause is a very powerful technique, but when you're standing up and speaking, most people, the last thing they want to do is pause, because it can be awkward, but once you get used to it, it's very powerful. So those 2 guys stick out right now. I think they are very good. There are some women, by the way, who are also fantastic speakers and who do as good a job as Steve Jobs and Barack Obama.
Well, you mentioned rehearsing beforehand. Why is it so important to rehearse? Also, how can you imagine when you're rehearsing, when you're in a room, there's no one there. What techniques can you use? Because when you go out on the big stage, there's thousands of people that you talk in front of.
Yeah, so I mean, the old technique, people say stand in front of a mirror, this, that, the other. You can do that. The more I've spoken, and I've delivered a lot of speeches now, the more I realize I am who I am. So when I'm speaking, I move a lot. And there's some people say, oh, you shouldn't move with purpose and this and that, which is absolutely fine, by the way, and it does create a good effect. That's not me. I talk a lot with my hands. I move my hands a lot. The more excited I am about a particular topic or point, the more I move my hands, and sometimes that can be slightly irritating for the crowd, but that's just who I am. So I've gotten over that now. I've come out the other end, having used and understood all those techniques, and then seeing which one do I want to use, which one do I not want to use. And I can use particular techniques, but then I realized being authentic and congruent are more important than using techniques. So that works incredibly well. And then there's practicing in front of a mirror, which if it works for you, fine. If not, don't learn the talk or the presentation word by word verbatim, because you're going to forget it anyway. So think about a particular structure and then lay it out as a mind map might help you. Bullet points might help you. Nail the opening, because that's very important. Nail the ending. That's extremely important. It's primacy, recency. You'll remember that you're probably your first school friend. You'll remember your last school friend. You'll remember the name of your first teacher. You remember the name of your last teacher, the first car you've had, and the most recent car you've got. You remember those, generally speaking. Stuff in between you tend to forget, or you're more likely to forget. So that helps. And don't go crazy and rehearse it 65,000 times, but rehearse it enough so that you feel comfortable. But enough so I think that there's a bit of nervousness in you as well. So you know it well enough to know I'm going to go out there, I've nailed it, I can talk about it. But don't be too polished. Because I don't think most people like polished speakers, because they're not authentic, they're not congruent, they lose that kind of edge. Whereas when you're in the moment and the nerves kick in, the adrenaline kicks in, you do certain things and it comes across as being more natural, that's when it works, just like actors do. I mean, they are trained and masters about how they step into a particular role and become this particular person, and they make it look like it's all natural. They're acting it out and they're so good. But if we can do it like that, and speaking and acting are two very different things, so we are not performing, we're not acting on stage, although we may use some of those skills in our speech. But if we can come across as being ourselves and making a few mistakes, getting a few things wrong, it's okay. People are very forgiving. They don't expect you to be DiCaprio or somebody, to be pinpoint perfect. So learn it well enough so you know your content. You don't have to rely on the slides, and the slides are there for the audience anyway to help them get the point, as opposed to help you remember what's coming next. So if once you become more accomplished, then going through it 2 or 3 or 4 times, sometimes 5 times, if that is enough. When you're learning out, go through it 10, 15, 20 times.
As a speaker, how do you know the audience is engaging in what you're saying?
You can tell. Some will fall asleep, some start playing on their phone. Some start looking at the neighbor, talking to them. Some will walk out. Some start looking at the ceiling. Some at the floor. You can tell when the energy dies out. And the more you engage, the more interactive you are, the more questions you ask them, the more you involve them, the more jokes that you have, the more movement that you have, the more exercises that you get them to do. Those types of things usually help you, and then get them to follow a particular command. So say, we're going to do this thing, and that's a good idea. Yes or yes. They say yes. That type of stuff. Raise your hand if you agree with this. Those type of things. So to keep them moving, keep the energy going. Those kind of things help. So thank you very much for your questions, Haseeb. Thank you very much, listeners, for joining us. Inshallah, we'll see or speak to you next week. Same time, same place. Khud Hafiz.